Some countries are beautiful. And then there is Switzerland, a place where mountains look like they were sculpted by artists, waterfalls fall from cliffs that seem to touch the clouds, and tiny villages sit quietly in valleys that feel almost unreal. But here's the strange part. Hidden inside the towering peaks of the Swiss Alps are villages so small, so remote, and so untouched by modern life that visiting them feels like stepping into a different century. Some have only a few dozen residents. Some houses are 300 years old. And in some valleys, not every home even has electricity. So how did these places survive unchanged for so long? To answer that question, the journey begins in one of the most magical valleys in Europe, a place where waterfalls fall straight from the sky. Deep in the mountains lies the village of Lauterbrunnen. At first glance, it looks like a peaceful alpine town. Wooden chalets, green fields, quiet streets. But look up, and the real surprise appears. Towering cliffs rise dramatically on both sides of the valley, and from those cliffs, dozens of waterfalls pour down toward the valley floor. In fact, Lauterbrunnen is often called the Valley of 72 Waterfalls. Some waterfalls are thin streams drifting down the rock like silver ribbons. Others thunder down the cliffs with incredible force. One of the most famous is the breathtaking Staubbach Falls. This waterfall drops nearly 300 meters from a vertical cliff. When the wind catches the falling water, it turns into a fine mist that seems to float in the air, almost like clouds touching the earth. During May and June, the view becomes even more dramatic. Snow melts high in the Alps, feeding the waterfalls. Wild alpine flowers cover the meadows, and the entire valley transforms into something that looks straight out of a fantasy film. But reaching these natural wonders requires effort. Visitors often begin their journey from nearby towns and hike along narrow mountain trails. The route can stretch nearly 8 kilometers, gradually climbing through alpine landscapes before revealing the famous waterfall viewpoints. And when travelers finally reach the cliffs, the view makes the entire journey worth it. But here's the next mystery. If this valley is so beautiful, why are the villages here so small? And where do the people who live here go when winter arrives? Despite the breathtaking landscape, life in Lauterbrunnen moves quietly. The village itself is calm. Traditional Swiss homes decorated with flowers stand beneath enormous cliffs. Cows graze peacefully in the fields. The loudest sounds usually come from waterfalls and distant church bells. There are no giant highways, no crowded skyscrapers. Just nature and a slow rhythm of life that feels almost timeless. This peaceful atmosphere is exactly what attracts visitors from around the world. For many travelers, arriving here feels like entering a living postcard. But Switzerland holds an even more unusual place, a village where the houses are made almost entirely from stone, a place so ancient that some buildings were already standing 300 years ago. And reaching that village requires traveling deep into one of Switzerland's wildest valleys. So where exactly is this mysterious stone village hidden? In the southern region of Switzerland lies the canton of Ticino. Unlike the German-speaking regions of the country, Ticino has strong Italian cultural influences. The language, architecture, and food all feel slightly different here. But deep inside this region lies a valley that feels frozen in time, the Bavona Valley. This valley is rugged, dramatic, and surprisingly isolated. Steep mountains surround it. Massive boulders sit scattered across the landscape. And tucked inside the valley is one of Switzerland's most fascinating villages, the tiny settlement of Foroglio. At first glance, the village looks like it belongs in another century. Stone houses line narrow paths. Roofs are made of heavy stone slabs. And behind the village, a powerful waterfall crashes down a towering cliff, the spectacular Cascata di Foroglio. Water plunges dramatically behind the village, creating one of the most stunning backdrops in Switzerland. But what truly makes Foroglio fascinating isn't just the scenery, it's the people who live there. Only about 30 residents live in this village. Most are older locals who have spent decades in the valley. And life here moves slowly, much slower than in modern cities. But there is one detail about this valley that surprises almost every visitor. Some houses here still live without electricity, and that raises a very big question. How is it possible that in one of the richest and most advanced countries in the world, People still live like this. The road to Foroglio is not a highway. It's a winding mountain route that slowly climbs deeper into the wild landscape of the Bavona Valley. Travelers usually begin from the lakeside town of Locarno. From there, the journey takes roughly an hour by car. But this is not an ordinary drive. Every few minutes, the scenery changes. Forests appear thicker. Mountains grow steeper. Massive rocks lie scattered across the valley floor like ancient monuments. It almost feels as if nature built this place for a fantasy movie. And then, suddenly, the stone village appears. The houses of Foroglio look very different from the colorful wooden chalets found in other parts of Switzerland. Here, most homes are built from large natural stones. These traditional buildings are known as rustici. Rustici houses were designed centuries ago to survive harsh mountain weather. Their thick stone walls protect against cold alpine winds. Their roofs are made from heavy stone slabs that can withstand powerful storms and heavy snow. Many of these buildings are incredibly old. Some date back more than 300 years. Imagine a home that existed before electricity, before cars, and before modern cities expanded across Europe. Walking through the narrow stone paths between these houses feels almost like stepping into another era. The walls are rough and textured, the doors are small and wooden, and everything seems perfectly connected to the surrounding mountains. Visitors sometimes say the village reminds them of something strangely familiar. Not a real place, but a cartoon. The giant stone houses and rocky landscape often remind people of the prehistoric village from the classic animated series, The Flintstones. Of course, this is real life, not animation, but the comparison shows just how unusual this place feels. Yet the village's most dramatic feature stands right behind it, a waterfall so powerful that it dominates the entire landscape. Just beyond the stone houses rises a tall cliff. From the top of that cliff crashes the spectacular Cascata di Foroglio. Water plunges down the rock face with incredible force, creating mist that spreads across the village below. The sound of the waterfall echoes through the valley. For centuries, it has been a natural symbol of the village itself. Visitors often stop in silence, simply watching the water fall endlessly from the mountains above. In spring and early summer, when snow from the Swiss Alps begins to melt, the waterfall becomes even stronger. The stream grows wider and more powerful, transforming the scene into a dramatic natural spectacle. Yet despite this incredible scenery, the village remains small and quiet. Only about 30 permanent residents live here. Most are older locals who grew up in the valley. During summer months, a few seasonal residents return, bringing a bit more life to the village streets. But even then, the atmosphere remains peaceful. No crowds, no heavy traffic, just mountains, stone houses, and the steady sound of falling water. But the most surprising fact about this valley is still ahead, because even today, not every home here has electricity. The Bavona Valley is often described as one of the most rugged valleys in Switzerland. For centuries, its steep cliffs and unpredictable rivers made large-scale development extremely difficult. Because of this isolation, modernization arrived here much later than in other parts of the country. Many houses were originally built only for seasonal use by farmers and shepherds. They would live here during the warmer months while tending livestock and gathering food from the mountains. When winter arrived, many families would leave the valley and move to lower areas where conditions were easier. Even today, some of these historic homes still operate without modern electricity. Instead, traditional lifestyles remain part of daily life. Wood-burning stoves provide heat. Fresh spring water flows naturally from the mountains. And the thick stone houses naturally regulate temperature. Cool in summer, warmer in winter. In a world filled with technology and constant noise, places like this feel almost impossible, yet they still exist, quietly hidden inside the mountains. But this raises another fascinating question. If life here has remained so traditional for centuries, what exactly makes people fall in love with villages like these? Villages like Lauterbrunnen and Foroglio represent something rare in the modern world, a slower rhythm of life. Here the mountains decide the pace. Seasons matter. Nature shapes daily routines. Spring brings melting snow and rushing waterfalls. Summer fills the valleys with green meadows and alpine flowers. Autumn paints the forest with gold and orange. And winter blankets everything in deep silence under layers of snow. The relationship between people and nature is direct and visible. Instead of controlling the environment, residents adapt to it, and that balance creates a peaceful atmosphere that travelers often describe as magical. But Switzerland still holds one more mystery. A valley where waterfalls fall from impossible heights and create a landscape so beautiful that it almost looks unreal. So what happens when nature, mountains, and history come together in one perfect place? After exploring the ancient stone village of Foroglio, the journey returns to one of the most extraordinary landscapes in Europe, the Valley of Lauterbrunnen. At first glance, it seems peaceful and quiet, but the deeper you look, the more incredible the landscape becomes. The valley is surrounded by enormous cliffs that rise hundreds of meters into the sky. From these cliffs, waterfalls pour down in every direction. Some are thin and gentle, others thunder down with incredible power. Together, they create one of the most dramatic natural scenes in the entire Switzerland. But among all these waterfalls, one stands above the rest. High above the valley falls the magnificent Staubbach Falls. The water plunges nearly 300 meters from the top of a vertical cliff. When the wind blows across the falling water, the stream breaks apart into a soft mist. From a distance, the waterfall almost looks like a floating cloud touching the earth. This unusual appearance is actually where the waterfall gets its name. Staub in German means dust, and the falling mist often looks like a cloud of dust drifting through the air. For centuries, travelers, poets, and artists have been fascinated by this waterfall. Some early visitors even described it as one of the most beautiful sights in Europe. But the magic of Lauterbrunnen is not just one waterfall, it's the entire valley. The cliffs surrounding Lauterbrunnen were shaped thousands of years ago by glaciers moving slowly through the mountains. As the glaciers carved deeper into the rock, they created a long valley with nearly vertical walls. When the ice eventually melted, dozens of streams began flowing down from the mountains above. Those streams became the famous waterfalls that now define the valley. Today, visitors can hike through peaceful trails, pass green alpine meadows, and watch waterfalls cascade from nearly every direction. During spring and early summer, the valley becomes even more spectacular. Melting snow from the Swiss Alps feeds the waterfalls, making them stronger and louder. At the same time, alpine flowers bloom across the fields. The entire landscape becomes a mixture of green, white, and bright colors. It's one of the reasons Lauterbrunnen has inspired photographers, filmmakers, and travelers for generations. But perhaps the most remarkable part of this valley is the feeling it creates. Standing in Lauterbrunnen, surrounded by towering cliffs and waterfalls, many visitors say the same thing. The place feels almost unreal. The valley is peaceful, the air is clean and cool, the mountains seem endless, and the small village beneath the cliffs feels protected by nature itself. Unlike crowded cities, life here moves slowly. Church bells echo through the valley, cows graze quietly in the fields, and waterfalls continue their endless journey from the mountains above. It's a reminder that some places in the world are still shaped more by nature than by modern development. But this raises an important question. In a world that continues to grow faster and more connected every year, how do places like this survive? Switzerland has made strong efforts to protect its natural landscapes and historic villages. Strict building regulations help preserve traditional architecture. National parks and protected areas help maintain the natural environment, and local communities work carefully to balance tourism with preservation. Because of these efforts, places like Foroglio, the Bavona Valley, and Lauterbrunnen continue to exist, much as they have for centuries. Visitors can experience landscapes that look almost the same as they did hundreds of years ago. Stone houses still stand strong, waterfalls still fall from the cliffs, and the mountains remain unchanged. These villages may be small, but they hold an important lesson. Sometimes the most extraordinary places are not the biggest cities or the most famous attractions. Sometimes they are the quiet valleys hidden deep inside the mountains. From the ancient stone homes of Foroglio, to the dramatic cliffs of Lauterbrunnen, to the powerful waterfalls like Staubbach Falls, Switzerland reveals a different kind of beauty, a beauty shaped by time, nature, and tradition. These villages remind us that history does not always live inside museums. Sometimes it lives inside quiet communities where life still follows the rhythm of the mountains. And somewhere in the vast landscape of the Swiss Alps, there are still valleys waiting to be discovered, which raises one final question. If places this extraordinary can remain hidden in one small country, what other wonders might still be waiting somewhere else in the world?